my project is about human-machine interaction in warfare. And looking in particular how the increasing interaction between humans and AI technologies changes how we understand agency in warfare. And I will talk you through how I understand agency and what my project intends to do over the next 4 years in the next couple of slides. But I wanted to start with giving you a bit of an overview of where we are at this moment, right? So if you look around the world, more and more militaries are using AI technologies. So it becomes part of military decision-making, mostly in the form of, for example, large language models, but also computer vision. And although maybe initially the thinking was, right, if we introduce more AI, that will give humans less of a role in warfare. Actually, what is happening is that we see now more emphasis on so-called human-machine interaction or human-machine teaming, right? So there is a recognition, thankfully, right, that humans always have to play a role in warfare and in decisions about the use of force. But that role of the human is changing. And this is really the heart of my project. Because I think if we think about these situations of human-machine interaction, we find that they change at the core agency. And if we define agency quite broadly, it's the ability to make choices and act. Because in kind of using AI technologies in warfare, we're not just transferring motor skills to technologies, but we're actually transferring cognitive skills to technologies. So that then implies, right, so that there is something happening in terms of how we are able to make choices and act in warfare. And I think this creates fundamental challenges, right? So, for example, if we think about soldiers interacting with AI technologies as part of their daily routines, to what extent can humans actually understand how AI technologies make decisions about targeting, right? So there's the famous black box problem, which I'm sure you've all heard about. Of course, this also exists in warfare in an extremely high-risk context. So the other question is, to what extent can actually humans be certain that decisions made using AI are reliable, right? So to what extent are these technologies actually behaving in the sense as we expect them to behave, or where are there potential failures? And then finally also actually, if failures happen, and they're bound to happen because no technology is perfect, who is accountable for them, right? So if we have a situation where humans and machines interact, who remains accountable for these failures? So I think this is kind of the context that we find ourselves in at the moment. And all of this is happening in a particular geopolitical situation, if you will. And I put here a map of Ukraine because all of this is happening in the context of a war in Ukraine, or Russia's war in Ukraine, I should say, right? Where both sides of this conflict are using various AI technologies to support their decision-making in military context, but also as part of weapon systems. And I think this conflict is accelerating the introduction of AI technologies in warfare. So this is just a background to help you understand why I think this project is so important at this very moment, because I think we're at a moment where these choices to integrate AI technologies are accelerating in warfare. And my project then looks at really these practices of human-machine interactions. And by practices, I mean basically patterned actions in social context and how they change or impact the exercise of agency in warfare. If we look at my discipline of international relations, political science, of course, I'm not the first person to think military AI or military AI technology is something that we should be looking at. So there is an established state-of-the-art or knowledge, right, in my discipline that looks at military applications of AI. But they look at more or less three fundamental kind of areas of knowledge. One of them is how the pursuit of AI technologies in the context of war by different states, in particular the so-called great powers. So here I mean, for example, the US and China, right? So how this leads to an arms race in AI terms, right? And how this might be destabilizing to the world as we know it. A second group kind of looks at how the development of AI technologies leads to new international norms, or might also require new international law to address the challenges attached to the introduction of these technologies in warfare. So the whole kind of debate about do we need new rules for the road, right? In a sense, if we have these technologies become part of warfare. And then there are also people, of course, looking at ethical considerations, right? So should we be doing this at all, right? Should we delegate part of the decision-making on the use of force, right, to take human life? Should we delegate that to machines at all? Or should that be the sole prerogative of humans? So I mean, I think there's a big literature out there that looks at these questions, and all of this is very important. I think what they don't address and what my project will try to address over the next 4 years is this question of agency, right? So which for me is kind of more foundational, right? So to what extent does this change really agency? And my project will do this so we talk always in projects about work packages, right? So you're getting that particular part of the project talk as well. So the idea of these work packages always is that they kind of run more or less sequentially, right? So starting with the first one, which is theory. As a political scientist, we're always interested in building theory, not because we like it, but we also do that, right? But because actually it is useful, right? Because it allows us to analyze or understand things in a different way that we weren't able to see before. And at the heart of the HuMach-project is really this idea to theorize agency in warfare as distributed between machines and humans. Because so far, of course, as you will all know, we more or less associate agency exclusively with humans, right? But if we say actually AI technologies have a role to play in decision-making, then we have to recognize that these technologies also have some form of agency, right? Which then means that agency in warfare becomes relational. So it becomes existent in between these human-machine interaction practices. So the first aim really of HuMach is try to understand how we can, so first of all, build, for example, typical ideas of what it means to exercise human agency and what might it mean to exercise machine agency and how are the two different, right? But then also how this distributed agency might affect warfare. In a second work package, HuMach is going to look more at the empirical side, right? So here, some of the developments in the last kind of couple of years especially is that lots of Western states have begun to talk about something called responsible AI in the military field, right? So there is this recognition, which is good, right? So that as we are introducing these technologies, that has to be governed by something. And if there's no top-down kind of legal framework in place, then what most states are doing is creating some kind of principles around responsible AI. You know, Denmark, for example, actually joined an effort by the US to come up with a political declaration on these responsible AI principles. And that sounds good, right, to start off with. But what HuMach also wants to do is investigate the extent to which these principles either include or conceal these kind of challenges of human-machine interaction that I talked about. So do these principles actually take this into account, right? So what we're looking at here is actually fundamental change to agency, or do they ignore that, right? And then in the second empirical work package, HuMach then really will interact with soldiers, right? So people who are using AI technologies as part of their daily routines in the military context, right? And we try to find out to what extent interacting with these AI technologies changes what I call here the deliberative space that humans can exercise in warfare. So there I mean, for example, the extent to which humans can critically assess or question outputs provided to them by AI technologies, right? And I think that is quite crucial. If you think the human has to play a meaningful role in warfare, then they have to be able to question whatever it is that AI technologies present them with in terms of potential targets or results, right? So, and at the moment there is initial research out there that kind of makes us think, you know, so that as you increasingly interact with AI technologies, you might lose some of this critical deliberative space. But there's not enough research done in the military context in particular, which is what HuMach then aims to do. And then finally, kind of resulting from that, right, is kind of to look at, okay, now we have this kind of full picture of distributed agency between humans and machines in the military domain. What does this mean for new rules, right? So to what extent can international law, as it stands at the moment, address the challenges raised? Or do we actually need new international law or new rules, right? Which is actually my position to safeguard human agency over the use of force. So here really the idea is that as HuMach concludes, right, we also try to come up with very clear ideas about what could be potential governance frameworks for this problem of human-machine interaction in the military domain. I think just to give you a brief idea what it is that we're looking at, right? Because of course, as said, I started very generally, kind of saying militaries around the world are doing that, and there are a number of them doing that. HuMach is only going to focus on a particular set of cases, Switzerland, the UK, and the US, which has to do with two fundamental things. First of all, all of these countries have published responsible AI principles, though they have said, okay, we want to include AI into military decision-making, but we want to do so responsibly. But they also occupy kind of very different points on the spectrum of where they are, right, in terms of integrating such technologies. So kind of with Switzerland being kind of at the low end of integrating such technologies, and the US kind of being a front runner, and the UK kind of being in the middle ground. A second reason why I'm looking at these countries is also that I have established networks of research participants in these countries. So I actually know people in military and diplomatic circles in these countries that I have been working with over the last couple of years, which is really crucial in terms of access, because you can imagine, right, if you have an intransparent context such as the military, right, so they're not going to want to talk to just kind of anybody off the street, right? So, but it depends a lot on building relationships of trust, right? So that they feel also, okay, I'm a trustworthy researcher. And you see here that HuMach will work with a range of different qualitative methods, you know, so we will interview people, we engage in participant observation of meetings, and we also analyze texts. As you can imagine, this is quite an ambitious project, so it's not just me who will be doing this, but we actually have a team of people who I selected as part of HuMach because they represent different disciplines. Because to understand really the exercise of agency in warfare, I think we can't just look from a political science perspective, but we need to also include other disciplines. And these are mostly social scientists, for example, in international law, in political theory. Some of them are also part of the team because they directly work with military personnel. So, for example, my colleague Anissa Heritage, who works at Sandhurst Military Academy in the UK. So who know a lot about, okay, what it actually means for military personnel to interact with these technologies. And I just want to conclude with kind of, hopefully, kind of watch this space, what will happen at the end of the 4 years, right? So, of course, as all of us, we aim to kind of publish our outputs in kind of in academic journals, and also for me it's very important also to have some kind of impact to the policymakers actually making decisions about AI technologies in warfare. So I also want to kind of reach a policymaker audience. But I think also apart from the particular military domain that I'm looking at, I think the HuMach questions, right, are also relevant across all kinds of other societal areas, right? Because we see that increasingly, be it in healthcare, right? Be it in kind of even job application, like hiring context, we see an increasing reliance on AI technologies, right? And I think what we have to ask ourselves, right, what does this mean for us as humans, right? How does this change agency, not just in the military context, but across all kinds of societal applications? So that's why I hope that in the end, HuMach will also provide us with some really needed critical thinking around how increasing reliance or increasing interaction with AI technologies also changes how we as humans function in the social world. So that's it. Thank you.